This week, we talk about the Elden Ring DLC that may be coming soon, Capcom's new DRM causing major issues with their games, Take-Two versus Remedy, Ubisoft wanting us to give up on owning games, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 15. I am your host, the man whose skinny cheats were disabled by DRM, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who will be most happy when he owns every game, Justin, better known as I Am Zeracon. How you doing today, Justin?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's been a hectic week, some stuff going on, but overall, I guess I can't say it's too bad. I went back to a sort of project I had done before that was making a sort of media PC. I halted that production just because I was having some technical difficulties, but I started getting back into it. I think things are going pretty well. I think I've found a couple problems that I might have been having. Things are going well. However, I think I might, for the time being, I might consider using that for gaming, just because it is capable. I do actually have a dedicated graphics card in there, and a pretty decent CPU, so I might do that. I might switch off from my laptop and start and do a little gaming on there, but I'll see.
Cool. All right, yeah, that's pretty cool. So what kind of graphics card do you have in that PC?
Originally it was a GTX 980 that I had bought in the middle of the GPU shortage.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime after, probably about several years later, I saw that Best Buy was selling new AMD RX 580 8GB variant for, I think it was $125, and
wow.
So I said I'll get that, and so that's what's in there right now.
Cool. Yeah, I still have a 980, a GTX 980 in a second PC I built after I upgraded my current PC. I just didn't think I'd be able to get enough money off the other stuff to make it worthwhile, so I just decided to build a second PC, and that one just stays in the guest room. And it doesn't get much of any use, but I just had a hard time parting with stuff that I wouldn't really get much of anything for, and I figured at least that way, if, down the line, like, try to get my kids into PC gaming, that sort of thing, that could be a starter PC for them. So. But yeah, that's cool. Yeah, my week has been interesting. It's been fairly busy, off and on. I was able to get a decent amount of stuff done over the weekend, though, so that was good. And my daughter turned 5 years old. My youngest child turned 5 years old on Monday, so it's kind of crazy to think that it's been that long, considering our kids were all born within a year and a half of each other. So it's like November 2015, July 2017, and January 2019. So very close together. And we haven't had any new kids since then. So, but it's it's really cool seeing how much my kids have grown, and especially seeing my daughter. I mean, she's always been like the most talkative of the three. Like, I mean, she was definitely talking the earliest, and she's talked the most since she started talking. And that was like 18 months that she started talking. And yeah, back then it was a lot more babbling, but she was still saying more words at 18 months than either of the boys were. And she definitely is the one who still talks the most. something, this is random, just kind of going off on a tangent, but something that I realized very early on is that key things about each kid's personality display themselves from the time that they're first born. So, like, well, actually, in the case of my daughter, it was before she was born that one of her key personality traits displayed itself. So my oldest, his is very much stubbornness, which, I mean, being like stubborn, quiet, very focused on like technical stuff versus actually talking, to where it ended up acting to his detriment because he ended up being very behind in his speech, but he's made a lot of progress. And then my middle son, it was hunger. From the time he was a baby, he was sucking on his thumb like immediately after he came out of the womb, and and food is his focus a lot of the times. He's talking about his next meal or the next time he gets to have dessert and that sort of thing all the time. It's like it takes a little too much after me in that way. And then my daughter, it's indecisiveness. So, as a little bit of background, of course, all of our kids were born when we were in Alaska. So they were all born in Alaska. Because of the fact that we didn't live within an hour's drive of a hospital that delivered babies for any of the kids. My wife would have to stay in Anchorage, for like the last month before she was due. And I mean, because we had insurance that would pay for it, so we didn't have to worry about the expense or anything like that. But with my daughter, so our middle son had been born 3 weeks early. He was perfectly fine. He was actually rather large for considering how early he was born. Our first son was born 10 days early. Middle son was born 3 weeks early, and then our daughter. We went in 4 weeks before she was due. Maybe it was 3 weeks, like 3.5 weeks before she was due. Figuring it's not impossible she could be born early like our middle son was. So when the thing is that we went in early. My wife and the boys were staying in Anchorage. Her mom came out to kind of help take care of the kids, so she wouldn't have to be doing all that while super pregnant. And I stayed in Anchorage for a few days with them before I went back to go to work and everything, because it was like right after Christmas. And like the day after I got back home, my wife calls me and says that she's going into labor. And keep in mind, this is the middle of winter. Roads are bad. It's dark most of the time. There's not a whole lot of lighting on the highway in general. And so it's a little bit stressful to drive anyway. But, I had stayed a little bit longer initially because I thought, okay, well, maybe she'll come. And she decided that she wanted to start coming, or so it seemed at least, about 24 hours after I got home. So I drove back in, and the labor stopped. And she finally ended up coming about a week or two later, something like that. She was born a week early, but it's just, it's like, I'm ready to come. Nope, I'm not. Never mind. And to this day, indecisiveness is like a key feature of who she is. And it's hilarious to me that these traits display themselves from the time that they're babies. Anyway, going on into the other stuff. So, this week has been kind of busy, but thankfully, two of the things that were originally scheduled for this week both got canceled. So it's like, thank you, Lord. Reduced my stress a little bit. But then, of course, I have this tonight, and then tomorrow I have to edit the podcast. If I can make the timing work out, I actually I'm hoping to stream the Xbox showcase, the developer, whatever, developer direct, whatever it's called, because I would really like to see what's going to happen there. I'd like to react to that, but we'll see, because that's like 2 o'clock my time. But before that, I have to conduct the new hire training for new hires, just IT related stuff. So then I have those things, then I have to edit the podcast after that. And then I think Friday, apart from work, I don't really have anything going on. Friday's more relaxing after work anyway. And then Saturday, we have a bunch of stuff going on, including practice because we're leading music at our church on Sunday. And so it's like there's just a whole bunch of stuff. And then we have our family group Sunday evening. So it's just very packed. But
yeah, it definitely seems that way.
And that's with the things that were taken out of the schedule. So anyway, it's a very packed week. But let's talk about video games. So what have you been playing this past week?
So it's because of everything that's going on, it's been a bit light. So I started the DLC for Vampire Survivors, and that's a combination of both the sort of new stuff they have added as far as the characters, but also I tried out their adventure modes, which is, I guess, sort of, you could say, a story mode of sorts, which is interesting considering that this has been primarily a, I guess, arcade style game where there's no story mode. You just go and play the game and rinse and repeat. So it's still going through that. I was also a bit skeptical because of the Among Us collaboration. I just felt it was a bit, it felt out of place, but just playing through it though, it does feel a bit natural, and any sort of, I guess any sort of doubt I have had is pretty much gone. So I am enjoying that. I think that's pretty well. The other game that I played was some more Stardew Valley. I went ahead and went back into the desert cave or skull cavern, I should say, to do the 100 levels, and I brought in my stacks of ladders to keep making progress. But I kind of stopped because I realized someone had mentioned that you can do it that way and just keep going straight down and not have to worry about the time running out for that day. But unfortunately, if you use more than 10 ladders, then you will actually be you'll be applauded for being clever, but you'll be slightly reprimanded for technically cheating in that sense. So I'm going to try doing it again and see if I can be lucky enough to just find a lot of holes that actually drop me down multiple levels, because that is one of the best ways to do it if you don't use ladders, because it's random, but you could possibly get up to skip, say, 11 levels, which helps. It'll take a lot of damage, but it definitely helps. So I'll see what happens next time.
All right. Well, I bet you can't guess what I've been playing over the past week. I mean, I'm sure that you've probably seen it pop up every time you hop onto Steam. So, quite obviously, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, also known as Metal Gear Solid V: The Phantom Pain. I finished the story, and I've been basically just working on cleaning up achievements and that sort of thing. I think right now I have like 5 or 6 achievements left to get. I'm not sure of the exact number. But yeah, I mean, so I part of what I had to do was there was a lot of the hard versions of story missions that I had to do. And I was able to complete all those, got S rank, got all the tasks done, which was all really good. I'm glad that I had that part at least knocked out. I still have a handful of stages where, quite a number of stages where I either don't have S rank, don't have all the tasks, or don't have either. But I do have all missions, all side missions completed, and yeah, I mean, overall, I'm very satisfied with the game. There is some content that I guess never got put into the game, and it's part of why people have called the game unfinished. Basically, because there was an additional chapter that kind of wrapped up a couple of loose threads in the story, but Konami never actually completed it. They I guess if you bought the collector's edition before it came out, or like you pre-ordered it, whatever, they had it basically as a bonus feature. You could see the essentially 30% complete version of the final chapter, which didn't have really any actual gameplay. It was basically just a few cutscenes and some concept art and just explanations, essentially, of how those remaining elements of the story got wrapped up. But it's one of those things where, like, I have mixed feelings on that front, because I do feel like, without spoiling anything, the twist that I essentially knew about, I didn't like know the full details. Like, I had just kind of a partial idea of, or more a general idea of what was supposed to happen, but not like a complete full understanding of all of it, because I didn't want to look into it. Like, I heard that twist more or less years before I even decided to try to play Metal Gear Solid. And so I stayed away from that information as much as I could, and then I finally got around to, obviously playing all these games. And so I don't know. I was pretty satisfied with it. I felt like the way that the thing was handled to me was better than I expected it to be. And I mean, I figured that even if I didn't fully enjoy the way that aspect was handled, I would still be able to appreciate the game because the gameplay's so good. And thankfully, even though I haven't fully decided exactly what I think about the story overall, the rest of the game as a whole is just so good that it really is up there for me. And I honestly think that while Metal Gear Solid 3 definitely still remains my favorite in the series, I think Phantom Pain probably is my second favorite, because 3 is just like a solid experience from beginning to end in basically every aspect, and Phantom Pain is not as good necessarily on the story, and maybe it doesn't wrap everything up as well in some ways, but at the same time also kind of wraps up some other things and fixes some plot holes that previously existed from the original Metal Gear games. And honestly, it's making me kind of think I might just want to jump into the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2. That is the MSX versions, not the NES versions, because the NES versions are not the actual games. They're just like something else. I wouldn't mind playing those someday, but they're not like actual Kojima made games. And yeah, I'm curious about that. But I'm like trying to decide, okay, when I'm done with this, do I want to actually just play Metal Gear or Metal Gear 2, or do I want to do my original plan and stick with continuing Sea of Stars? But I'll see where I'm at when I finish this. My guess is I'm probably going to end up playing Metal Gear. More likely than not, just because I'm just kind of on like this Metal Gear kick. And the fact that, I put like over 200 hours into this game and I'm still wanting to keep playing, that says a lot. Now, of course, once I actually complete all the achievements, it's not likely that I'm going to have any reason to keep playing. It'll basically just be, I'll just be ready to go ahead and move on to the next thing, but more likely than not, it'll be, I want to play these old Metal Gear games I've never played before. So, that's pretty much that. Yeah, very good stuff. Very, very good stuff. Though I could just see, whenever they do the next version of the Master Collection, if they decided to, I mean, I might be giving Konami too much credit, but if they decided to put like 4 Peace Walker and 5 all into one package, I could almost see them adding that extra episode and like completing it. And then it'd just be like, dang you, Konami, why do you have to do this? I just finished going through this 200 hours of this game. I'm not ready to replay it. I just want to have that last episode, play it, and then that's it. But more likely than not, what they would end up doing is, assuming they release it as part of either Master Collection Volume 2 or Volume 3, depending on what other games they decide to do, more likely than not, they would just have that as a bonus feature to look at in the same way that they had it for the original version if you bought the Collector's Edition. So, but you can look it up on YouTube. I mean, I'm not saying you should, I'm saying it's possible to look it up on YouTube, and that's how I checked it out. So at least from that standpoint, I got that part as incomplete as it was. But yeah, it's interesting. I can see some reasons why they wouldn't include it, particularly because it kind of introduces a couple of things that were not necessarily like specifically talked about, but then it also wraps up a couple things that were not that were kind of like unresolved in a sense. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that the fact that Konami severed their relationship with Kojima before the game came out was part of the reason why that part never got finished. But then Kojima says that it is a finished game, so maybe he really was part of the decision to not include that last part. I don't know. One thing I do want to mention. So one of the last missions you do, and this doesn't, I'm not going to give any specifics, but there is a part where you basically have to go around and you're defending someone from an assault from like a bunch of tanks. You have like, it's tanks and like APCs that fire missiles and stuff, and then there's like a gunship helicopter, and you have to either destroy those things or extract them. But there's such a crazy number of them coming at you, and it's not like something where you can't, I mean, it's difficult to sneak around. There are technically ways to do it, but if you want to get like the best rank and everything, you have to extract every single one of the vehicles. And ultimately, I did find a way to do it, but it was not easy. Or well, I should say, before I found this alternative way to do it, which isn't, I mean, it's still tricky, but less tricky. There was just no way I was going to get through it that way. But the problem is that once you went into this mission, which automatically started after completing the side mission that was connected to it, you couldn't leave the mission until you completed it. Whereas normally, anytime a mission starts, you can still back out, and then you can just come back to it later if you want to. So I had to finish it. So the first time I went through, destroyed everything and extracted whatever I could. And then the second time, when I actually completed it, I was able to do it in such a way that I extracted all the vehicles as needed. So anyway, enough about that. I will still be playing it for the rest of this week. Probably by the time we meet again, I will still be playing it, because I don't know how much time I'm going to have to play over the next week, but we'll kind of see how that goes. But, you have anything else before we get into the news?
I guess just a couple questions, or one question I'd say. So, based on the run that you've had so far, and I guess you mentioned the 2 original Metal Gear games, are there any other entries in the series that you are still on your list to complete?
Yeah. So basically, I skipped the ones that were not canonical, with the exception of like the 2D games. I haven't played any of the 2D ones. But I have Metal Gear 1 and 2 on the Vita, because those came with the HD collection of um, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. And then I have, well, because there wasn't any other way to get it, I got Metal Gear Acid 1 and 2, which I think are not canonical, through emulation on my Steam Deck. And you can't buy those anymore without paying scalpers. Because they don't even have them on the Vita or PS3 or anything stores. So you can't buy those from Sony. And then Portable Ops is one that I have on Vita, which is another one of the PSP games. I might actually try to see if I can emulate that one, because I've heard it does not control well, and I think that at least on Steam Deck I should be able to get put in some kind of thing to give me 60 frames per second, so that at least I would have that instead of playing at 20 like it probably runs. But we'll kind of see what happens with that. I think that's... Oh, no, and then there's the Game Boy Color one as well, which I also have on my Steam Deck. But, yeah. So I believe the 2D ones, well, 1, 2, and Ghost Babel, which is the Game Boy Color one, are canonical. I believe Portable Ops is canonical. And then the rest of them, the Acid games at least, are not. And I can't remember what other games there were, but those are the ones that I know of. And I bought all the ones that I could buy that didn't require paying a scalper insane amounts of money. So.
Okay.
But we'll see what I actually play. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to play more than just Metal Gear 1 initially. We'll kind of see how I feel by the time I finish it, whether I want to continue on and play 2 and maybe Ghost Babel. Because I can't remember exactly the order. I'm pretty sure 1, 2, and Ghost Babel all take place before Metal Gear Solid 1. So if that's the case, then I would probably play all of them if I find that it's that I want to keep playing. And then from there, hopefully I'll convince myself to not go back through all of the Metal Gear Solid games. Because it has been a while since I played the first Metal Gear Solid. It was like 2019 or 2020 that I played that. So, but 2 and 3 I literally played last year. So I am keeping my eyes out for a deal on the PC version, though, because modders have fixed the games. So, or at least they've fixed 2 and 3. I'm not sure about 1, but 1 already plays really well through DuckStation. So it's like 60 frames, HD, and widescreen, which is not the case with the official Konami version, of course. Anyway, anything else or news?
We can go right into the news, I think.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this Elden Ring DLC. So the gist of it, from my understanding, and obviously you can say more, if I don't cover it properly, is that within Steam's database, Elden Ring has some unnamed DLC that's been included in their database now. Is that essentially correct?
Yeah, that's basically it. Like, I guess the best way is just that they have all the DLC that they have listed. Like, I guess the official stuff that's announced, like the soundtrack, like the art book, all of that stuff has already been listed. But something new was added recently. I think it was January 5th or something like that, and it's just unnamed DLC, and that's very speculative, but it really points to the fact that we might be getting the Elden Ring DLC Shadows of the Erdtree at least announced soon, even if it's something that comes out, say, next year. It definitely points to something that could be something that's announced. So that is pretty much the main point of everything, is that there's something new, it's DLC, and there's something else that it could be, because you're not going to just put out a blank, unnamed DLC for a game that's already released, that's something that's already been getting, no other support has been given outside of, just performance patches. So that is very interesting to see. I personally think that it is going to be the DLC. I think it's something that we will hear from. I can't even remember when we even last heard about DLC being in production, but it's definitely been a while. So I have a strong confidence that this actually could be or will be the Shadows of the Erdtree DLC, and it makes me just really want to get back into Elden Ring and get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so like during this part, I actually have some of my gameplay that I recorded before, that I recorded really just for our channel intro video, but I've been, kind of itching to try doing a Souls game again, and I'm so torn on whether I want to go back to Dark Souls Remastered on the Switch, since that's the one I have more progress in, or if I want to go back to Elden Ring. And I mean, either way, whenever I do it, I just want it to be like, this is the game I'm playing, and this is the only game I'm playing for a while, because when I was, really focused on, especially Dark Souls, it was the only game I was playing. And it's just, of course, getting sidetracked, and well, really it was that I was playing Dark Souls, and then I got my Steam Deck, and then I started playing Elden Ring more, because that was the one I really wanted to play in the first place. But yeah, I would say that the likelihood that it is the DLC, I agree with you. It's probably that, and I think that there is a possibility maybe that it could be revealed at either the next Xbox or PlayStation event. I think that the Xbox one is only going to be their first party stuff, in which case then it won't be the Xbox event, because that's, not a first party Xbox game. But I could see it very easily being revealed at PlayStation's next State of Play, which really could be any time. And I mean, it would be a good place. And I would think that there's a decent chance that when it gets revealed, it's going to be shadow dropped. I think it's going to come out the day that they reveal it, because there's not really any reason why they couldn't do that. Since it's not going to, I would assume it's not going to have a physical release. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess the only way it wouldn't be is if it was still something that was in production, but
that's true. But
other than that, though, I agree, there wouldn't really be much of a reason to delay it, when you could just say, hey, here's Shadow of the Erdtree, boom, go ahead and
and I mean, the original game dropped almost 3 years ago now, so
yeah.
So I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be ready by this point. Because I'm sure that they had started working on it, at least, I mean, like right around the time that the base game came out, or, not long after. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. But either way, I think it's pretty cool. I'm excited about it. I really need to just get focused on one of the Souls games and devote time to it, because like I don't know what it is about those games. Like, the first time I tried playing Demon Souls, I know that I really just kind of got like this dark, depressing feel from it. And I mean, obviously that's the kind of environment that they are. But because of that, like, I played for like 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes of Demon Souls on PS3. I just found it so dark and depressing that I wasn't interested in playing any further. And so for years and years, like, I wasn't even willing to touch it. And then Elden Ring comes. Well, I mean, Dark Souls came to Switch before that, which kind of made, I mean, hearing some people talk enthusiastically about it, I'm like, maybe I'll give this a try sometime. I don't know yet. And then Elden Ring came out, and just all the hype about it, especially knowing that it was also that it played well on Steam Deck. Just kind of like, I really want to play this game. And so I went ahead and I found a code. I can't remember if it was through Green Man Gaming or maybe Fanatical or something. You know, got a decent price on it. Got it a little bit cheaper than usual. And I just got hooked. I got hooked very quickly. And I was really hooked to it. But, of course, it was still like a couple months until I would be able to get my Steam Deck. I mean, at the time, I didn't know when I was getting my Steam Deck because I had ordered mine. I had pre-ordered mine or put my reservation in the day of when they first made it available to do so. And but I was just really wanting to play it on a portable because it's just much more convenient that way. And so I tried playing a bit of like Dead Cells, but it wasn't really scratching that itch for me. So I went ahead and ordered a physical version of Dark Souls Remastered on the Switch, since that was the only portable way I could play a game like that, and just got completely absorbed in that, and then got my Steam Deck in early April, and almost basically haven't gone back to Dark Souls Remastered since then. I think I've tried going back a couple times here and there, but it's always been more like I want to play it, but I'm not ready to get back into it. And yeah, so either way, we'll see what happens. I am very seriously probably going to grab Mortal Shell on GOG pretty soon here, because it's like $3 for the deluxe edition currently for the next few days. So I'm very seriously considering it. There's a few other games that are on sale for, like $2-3 right now on GOG that I'm very seriously considering grabbing. Oh, I one thing I did forget to mention, GOG has a number of free games that I hadn't known that they had. At least currently they have them free, or at least had them free a few days ago. Like the first 2 Elder Scrolls games, which I've never played either of those. So I snagged both of those, and I think like one of the early Quake games, and like the original version of Shadow Warrior, and a handful of other things. But it's like, yeah, I'm adding more to the backlog, but these don't cost me anything, so I don't care. DRM free and all that, so
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go ahead and, well, actually, do you have any other thoughts on this Elden Ring DLC before we move on?
No, I think I'm good with this.
Okay. All right, so why don't you take us into this topic about Capcom? I know you've done a video on it, and I definitely want to. I think you're more well researched on it than I am, so I'd like to have you explain this.
Okay. Yeah, so a lot has happened, and I'll definitely keep this abridged, but essentially a report came out about Capcom releasing DRM into a bunch of their older games, games like Resident Evil Revelations, which is actually from what I could tell, was the first game that actually, where this was found, but there are other games like Strider, Mega Man Zero Collection, Mega Man Battle Network 1 and 2, Resident Evil 5, and there might be a couple other ones that I'm missing, but those are the ones that are... Oh, and Ghost Trick, that one also has... and it's not even like it's de novo, it's a new type of DRM that has been found called Enigma Protector. Initially, the reports were saying that the games were really tanking performance, that there were stutters, that it was even breaking performance on Steam Deck, that they were incompatible, or even breaking Steam Deck units. Later, it was found that there were some other issues that were outside of the DRM that were part of it. And so when that ends, there weren't any problems. It's a little bit shadier, though, because there's reports that saying that the DRM is possibly from a Russian company, or a company that has a front based in Russia. So there's that end as well. Capcom also is saying that they are planning on implementing Enigma in more of their backlog of games. So games that, say, had de novo but then had removed de novo removed from them are going to have Enigma added to them, or just games that were older that they released, they are just going to add them in retrospect. So that's pretty much the general idea of what has happened.
All right, so this whole thing with Capcom, of course, obviously, I am not pro DRM, not by any stretch. I think that it is a horrible thing that they have added, especially because of the fact that while I understand their reason of wanting to keep people from having stolen copies of games, that sort of thing, the reality is that if it is causing performance issues, that is a problem. The fact that they're they're sneaking it into their older games, that's a problem. However, what I also see as part of my reason why, like, I'm a little hesitant on this whole thing is whether or not it's something that makes me say I'm not going to support them. Mostly because while there aren't a whole lot of Capcom games I play, there are some that I play. And I don't feel like me stopping playing those games is necessarily going to solve anything per se. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being selfish because I still want to play the Monster Hunter games I have, and I still want to play ones I have on 3DS, which theoretically the 3DS ones shouldn't be updated, so all the ones I have on there should still keep running fine, because I bought a bunch before the eShop closed. I mean, $3 a piece for most of the games that I bought from them, between like Monster Hunter Generations was $3, and the Resident Evil games were $3 a piece, and most of the Ace Attorney games were $3 a piece. It's just like, you know, I still have some games I want to play from them, but yeah, I know that it might seem like, okay, I'm just rolling over because I'm going ahead and, you know, playing the games that I played very sporadically just because I happen to like the games. It is what it is. I don't have any disrespect or ill will towards you or anyone else who decides that they're not going to support Capcom anymore. That's entirely your decision. I don't think I'm any better than you, and I don't think, you know, like I don't think any less of you or anyone else for making that decision. I just personally don't see the need. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and something actually I forgot to mention earlier was the fact that one of the theories that people actually had was, or one of the claims that was actually false, or at least it wasn't to the extent, was that the reason for, or was that the DRM actually prevented modding, which is like something that Capcom is very against.
Mm-hmm.
But that also was claimed to be false. And I actually will agree with you, actually, is the fact that, and this is something that in my video that I probably should have clarified, is that I will play the Capcom games that I have, provided that they are the ones that don't have the Enigma Protector DRM. So Monster Hunter Rise World, I can't remember if the Mega Man X games have it, but I think they don't have, the X games don't have it. So those games, I am fine with playing them for right now, at least. So if I know that Enigma is added later on, I'll probably shift my stance on this. And there's also one other thing that I thought about, is that this is something I think I wish that Valve would do, is that they would actually put something on their store saying that this particular DRM is implemented, because they have that for nearly every other type of DRM, for de novo, easy anti-cheat, battle eye, all the other anti-cheats and DRMs, they have those listed on the store so people know before they even purchase them. So I think that's something that Valve should do here.
Yeah,
so that way
agree.
people know that this game has this DRM in it. So that's something I think Valve should do. I don't know how new Enigma is. I've never heard of the company before. I think a lot of people haven't heard of it either, just because of the fact that we don't know much about the company. Like, we know Denuvo, we know the company, but we don't know anything about this company. So I think that's something that Valve should definitely let people know. So like, hey, this is the DRM that is in these games. But yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, I definitely don't have a problem with people who have the games already and are doing it. I just personally won't be buying any more games from Capcom, which kind of sad about, because I like Monster Hunter. I went the Wilds in the future. I went Dragon's Dogma 2, but I'm just like, I can't give you my money, Capcom. Like, I've loved the games you have. Like, you're brilliant game designers, and you've put out so many games. You've even said you wanted to make PC your main platform, but then you just do this, and it's like, I don't know if I can trust you.
Yeah. That's understandable. I mean, one of the things for me is that I would say, like, I probably wouldn't buy any more of their new games unless, of course, you have modders go in and fix the DRM problem like they did before with Denuvo, and come up with an anti cheat thing to get rid of Enigma. So, and I'm sure that people are already working on that right now, which, they should be. But either way, yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that. I definitely think you made, some great points, and I'm one of those people who I find that there are times where I'm willing to more or less boycott something. But most of the time, I just don't even bother, because in my case, at least, I find that typically the boycotts are only effective if you know that you can stick to them. Like, even though there's a whole lot of things I hate about Amazon, I don't think I could ever actually boycott them, because they're really the best at what they do in so many ways. And there are a lot of times where, like, I need a particular thing, and I just literally can't get it locally. Which, I mean, compared to where I was before, when I was in rural Alaska, where there's a lot of stuff I couldn't get. Now it's like I can get stuff from Amazon so easily, and if I can do that versus having to call a bunch of different places or wander all around town, then sometimes that's what I'm gonna do. But I don't know. It's just, it's not always as easy as I would like it to be, even if I don't agree with certain things. And the reality is that there's so many instances, at least in situations like that, where their money is going to go towards things that I don't support, but I can't really control that. And, it's one thing, like, when you see some of the recent boycotts that have actually been really successful, like, especially with, like, Bud Light, where people very much made their voice heard. I mean, I never bought Bud Light. I don't drink beer. I hate beer. I think it's disgusting. But, like, I mean, for people who legitimately liked that sort of thing, like, I'm glad for them that they made that decision. They were able to stick with it. They were able to band together and really make their voices heard. Then you have other examples where, like, a bunch of people don't pay for the garbage that Disney is putting out, and it seems like maybe they're learning their lesson, but then they just go back to putting out the same garbage. It's like, okay, Disney, you aren't learning. So that's why I, as an example, not to say anybody needs to do exactly what I did, I canceled my Disney Plus subscription. I had it for 2 or 3 years, and I made use of it, but I was just finding more and more that the content they were putting out was not worth the extra money, worth spending the money on. And so instead I just found I bought physical copies of the movies that I liked, that I know my kids like to watch, and things that I would like to watch. And that was that. Now I don't have Disney Plus. I still have not seen a single new thing that's coming to Disney Plus that makes me want to have it again. And on the rare occasion I come across something that I'm like, something older, for example, that I would like to watch, in most cases I can probably track down the DVD or Blu-ray without too much trouble. Some things are harder than others. Like, one thing I will say that's been recent that they actually did in 2022, which was really good, was the Santa Clauses, which was like the like a mini series follow up to the Santa Claus movies with Tim Allen. And it was actually really, really good. Like, legitimately good. I think it was only maybe 10 episodes or 8 episodes, something like that, but it was actually great. Unfortunately, they don't do it physical at all. Disney refuses to put that one out on DVD or Blu-ray, at least so far. So, I haven't been able to buy that, but that's like one of the only things that I would want to get, and then everything else I'm like, no. I mean, Mandalorian had a great 2 seasons, but the 3rd season was not good, and this upcoming movie, I mean, I might go see it in the theater whenever it eventually comes out, but I'm not interested in season 4 of The Mandalorian because it's not even going to have the same character. I mean, it's not going to have Din Djarin and Grogu. It's not going to have them, or if it has them, it's just going to be like cameo here and there. They're going to make what's her face the new Mandalorian. I mean, the lead. And yes, she's a character that existed before them, and so on and so forth. And she is a legitimate, like, 100% native-born Mandalorian, whatever. But I'm not interested in that. The 3rd season just lost me. So, anyway, that's enough ranting about that stuff. The point is that you boycott what you like to boycott, and I'm just talking about people in general. Boycott what you feel that you need to boycott. I'll boycott what I feel I need to boycott, and then there are some things where I just don't bother. And Capcom is probably going to be one of them, because I don't buy that many of their games anyway, unless they're like dirt cheap, like with 3DS when I bought a bunch for $3. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.
All right, so we had an interesting lawsuit. I don't know if it's actually a lawsuit at this point, but Remedy Entertainment is basically being... Let me see if it actually says anything specific here. So let me try to summarize. Okay, so Take-Two, which owns Rockstar, is basically in a trademark dispute with Remedy Entertainment, which is best known for things like Control and Alan Wake, Max Payne, Quantum Break, things like that. So Remedy's new logo has an R that, at least by what Take-Two says, they think that it's a little bit too close to the Rockstar logo, because Rockstar is owned by Take-Two. And so they're in a dispute with Remedy over this new logo. Now, I'm looking at the new logo for Remedy. The R is not that close. I mean, they're vaguely similar, but I'm not sure how anyone would mix up the two. I mean, Rockstar, it's an R in a different kind of font with a star on it, on a yellow background. Very distinct. Remedy, it's like an R that's kind of out of focus, like almost you're seeing double, and it says Remedy under it. To me, that's very clearly different. They don't look the same to me at all. And I don't know how anyone is going to mix up the two. Think that Rockstar is Remedy or vice versa. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's there. I don't see how Take-Two thinks that this looks anything close. I mean, the R for the Remedy logo looks closer to the R in Team Rocket than it does to the Rockstar logo. And I mean, honestly, anyone who knows Rockstar, they know what the logo is supposed to look like. I mean, even actually on my way to my job, there's actually a pedestrian sign. Someone, and I'm pretty certain this is what it is, I'm pretty certain someone put a Rockstar logo sticker on the sign. And I looked, I said, wait a second, that looks so familiar. Then I thought about, wait, that looks like the Rockstar logo. But like, so I don't see how anyone would get them confused. As you mentioned, the R looks completely different. It's a different font. It's a different background. There's not a star. It says Remedy right there. And so that's definitely, they really, in my opinion, do not have a case at all. And some people I've seen make jokes saying that, Take-Two, your logo looks very eerily similar to the Terminator 2 title. Like, you've just put T2 right there. And there were, I can't remember, there was some other things that people were saying, hey, your logo looks similar to this. And so it's really absurd how you can think one thing, especially a letter. I mean, there are so many cases where you could see an R and just think, oh, wow, I'm going to sue you for that. And someone even pointed out that Take-Two actually tried to sue a drink company called Rockstar some years ago, and they lost about that. And so why would, when a company actually has a name that's similar and you lost, what makes you think you'll win in a case where it's a letter? Like, who has the rights to a letter? It makes no sense at all.
I mean, that one, it's like, the only way I could see it is basically if they're just hoping that they'll get, you know, depending on who's judging the situation, you know, you get different opinions because different judges will get different opinions. I mean, you have terrible judges like, you know, the guy, what was that guy's name who was involved in the Vic case? Was it Chuck?
Oh, gosh. I forget his name. But
anyway,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, the decisions he made just made absolutely no sense because he you know, and obviously, you know, there was all sorts of issues on Vic's legal team side as well. You know, we know that there were problems, and you know, thankfully, by the grace of God, everything seems to have turned out well for Vic. But it's you know, it was Judge Chupp. I remember now. It was definitely Chupp. Anyway, so depending on the type of person you get looking at the case, they may look at it different. And I definitely would say, yeah, they don't have a case in this situation because the logos are not even close to the same thing, apart from being the letter R. And as you said, if they couldn't win against a company that had the same name, even if it was, you know, also once again very different logo, what makes you think that you're going to win when you have things are so different from each other? But whatever. It's some of these lawsuits don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, Take-Two, you don't even need the money. I mean, you don't. And I don't know what makes you think that there's actually going to be any sort of brand confusion. There's just not. And the other thing is that even if there was some sort of quote-unquote brand confusion, it's not like it's a bad brand. I mean, Remedy makes good games. Rockstar makes good games. Neither one of them would harm the other, so I don't know. I think it's ridiculous is what it is.
Take-Two needs to take 5.
Yep, Take-Two needs to take 5. That might be this week's title. Take-Two needs to take 5 and Take-Two with a take 5 candy bar. Those things are amazing, by the way. Super addictive, and I may have eaten too many of them during Christmas. Story of my life. All right. So let's... you got any other thoughts before we move on into the last main topic for the night?
Nope.
All right. So, apparently... Well, this isn't even apparently. I'm just going to go ahead and read some stuff from GamesIndustry.biz, who interviewed the find what his actually. Okay, so the director of subscriptions at Ubisoft, however you pronounce it. Talking about Ubisoft or Ubisoft Plus, which they have more recently made changes to the service. Basically, just kind of changing some things about how it functions in terms of price, and they have like separate versions of it. They have Ubisoft Plus Classic, which covers a lot of their previous catalog of games, and then they have Ubisoft Plus Premium, which is the newer version, and this features all new releases. So that includes the Prince of Persia game, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which just came out. The premium version is $17.99 a month, available for PC, Xbox, and Amazon Luna. And then Ubisoft Plus Classics was already available to PlayStation players, and has the back catalog, but is also coming to PC. And all that by itself, not a problem. But what became so controversial about this whole thing is that, in short, the president here, relating to these streaming services, says we are trying to get people to get to a point where they will no longer own their games. They will simply subscribe, and they will be happy. And people call this stuff far right, and they'll make all sorts of accusations about people who talk about the World Economic Forum and all this other stuff that is just, it sounds like it's ridiculous, but then you hear them saying stuff like this with video games. Now, this is like the all digital future. This is where it's been going the whole time, that they want us to get to a point where we don't own any of our games. All we do is we pay a subscription so that we're essentially renting our games, and they can take them away at any time. And even when it comes to the digital games, they can, in many cases, unless they set up something specific otherwise, take away the games whenever they feel like it. I mean, it's just like we saw recently with various examples of not only games being delisted, but TV shows and movies being delisted, which they did actually backtrack on regarding the Discovery stuff. They ended up working out a deal with Discovery to keep the stuff on the store for longer, so people could continue to hold on to their previous digital purchases. But I don't know. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's also very telling how he was trying to be very sneaky, or I guess he was trying to be very careful with how he worded things too, especially since he had a big build up saying, "Oh, we want to make sure that we always give players a sense of choice. Mm-hmm. We always want to make sure they have options. We always want to make sure that they can do these things." And they even tried to appeal by saying, "I'm a father. I've got a stack of DVDs at home," and I'm thinking, sure, but what you do as a father is in conflict of interest with being the president of a subscription service where you're trying to promote people to buy your subscriptions and to pay into your services. So even with that being said, I don't buy that part, and especially when you say you want people to become comfortable with the idea of not owning those games. That is a huge red flag there. And I do actually want to state that I actually believe that people, if they want to, should have the option to use subscription services. I don't think there's a problem with them per se,
right.
But I think the problem with them is the fact that people get so used to convenience that companies take advantage of that and then try to make that the only option you have. because once you sort of get onto that, and this might sound like a conspiracy theory, but once you go into that slippery slope, then you lose those options you had before. And the president even mentioned, he said, gaming is the most resistance you ever seen, because he said people felt comfortable not owning their CDs anymore, not owning their DVDs anymore. So shifting away from, say, owning your movies or your CDs and your music to paying for a subscription, like through, say, Spotify or Apple Music or any other service out there. And then also same with movies and TV shows. You buy your DVDs, Blu-rays, VHS tapes back in the day, and now you just have streaming service for all these different companies now. And gaming is probably the only entertainment service that actually blocks that, or at least the one that he admits to being the one for the slowest, because people, especially if you're in console, on PC, you're pretty much out of luck if you want to get something physical. That's something that really has been slow to take. So I admit that, he really wants to see that change coming over, and I really think that that's something we should not have, because you should not be comfortable, and I think this also applies to music and shows, and I guess to a degree books, because more people are, I guess, getting audiobooks or digital books. You shouldn't feel comfortable with just being able to give all that stuff away, because if you bought something, especially if you bought something, sure, if you're using a streaming service, you're not really buying it. But if you bought something, if you got something with the intention to use it however you want, use it whenever you want, you should not be able to lose access to that. And I know people say, well, you technically bought a license, and so that license can be revoked at any time. No, you bought something with the intent to use it. And there's actually a channel I watch some called really just Louis Rossman, but he's a owner of a computer shop. He's actually also a really big proponent of the right to repair movement. So people who actually want to repair their own devices, they can do so without actually having to send something into a manufacturer, that they should be able to have the tools and means to actually repair stuff themselves. He actually worded this perfectly, is that fact that license agreements, especially with EULAs, they're really just a deceptive tactic to get you to agree to something that you really do not intend or would agree to if you actually understood it. Especially said that with a lot of these EULAs, they really hide the core stuff that really is important somewhere near the end of an agreement. And I actually agree with that. Going through actually some myself, sometimes I actually do that with games and whatnot. I'll read through them. But yeah, he's right about the fact that a lot of the important details are actually hidden away because they're being deceptive. And in this case, I actually would agree that the CEO is being deceptive here as well. But actually, I'm sort of going off point. But I do believe that if you bought something, you should have the sole right to do that. And even if it's something that's digital, I still think that that's your right to own it. Like, you should be able to have it. And it's ridiculous to the fact that even though with a deal between Warner Brothers and Discovery, I think that sure they delayed that, but they could always come back later and just say, okay, now since things have quieted down, we're going to revoke your rights to that.
Right.
And that's something that streaming definitely is going to do. Like, shows from services have been pulled before. Like, there's a lot of stuff that was on Netflix that was from Disney, that was from NBC shows on there. They just pulled them completely because they were going to say, hey, we're going to make our own streaming services. Yeah. So if you get a streaming service, you can lose what you have on there at any time. And even he says that, well, that's not what's going to happen. You know, you'll be with the streaming services, you can play your games anytime. You can not have to worry about your save file being gone. It'll be right there for you anytime. And to a degree, I think that it's like more likely that you won't necessarily lose anything because would be a Ubisoft first-party title. So it's not like it's a third-party title where they would say, "Oh, we lost the rights to this game, so we have to pull it." Or say, like for example, with Game Pass, where games are added but games are also removed. Games will be there, but at the same time, you can still lose access to it. And this is necessarily the same thing, but with Denuvo, a year or two ago, I think it was, because of something that happened with their servers, every game that used Denuvo, people couldn't play the games at all during that down period. So that was games, I think, like the Shadow of the Tomb Raider. That was also, I think, maybe Persona 4 Golden. And there were some other games, but pretty much any game that used Denuvo, you lost access to it because of the fact that it was all tied to a server, to a company. So streaming is pretty much that, but worse. So why would you want to be comfortable with the fact that your games can be gone at any time?
Right. Yeah, this whole thing just kind of, I mean, the more I've become, over the years, I've become more and more against digital only when it comes to a lot of situations. Now, granted, obviously, as you said, PC, we don't have a whole lot of choice because they don't really do physical copies for games for the most part. I mean, the last time I tried to buy a physical copy of a game for PC, which was it was literally the last time I did, because it only came with a digital code. So I have a case, but I just had a code, and that was it. That was with Mirror's Edge Catalyst, by the way. But when it comes to like music, for example, there was a period probably around 2006-ish that I bought a bunch of music through iTunes. And then at one point I decided I wanted to switch from iTunes over to Amazon Music. And it was mostly just because I'm not really a fan of Apple. Not that their products are necessarily bad quality, just you pay too much for what you get. And when I wanted to take over some of my music from iTunes, I even like iTunes as a software. I think it's good software. Well, for one, I couldn't get iTunes on an Android device, which was annoying. And so I couldn't get a lot of my music transferred over. And so I went with Amazon for a bit, and then when I was finding that Amazon was giving me problems, that their MP3 application was giving me problems because it wouldn't recognize a lot of my music that I had on my phone that wasn't from Amazon, that was stuff I had acquired elsewhere, then I stopped using that and started using just a free application that was something different, but also had a bit more ability to customize, like modifying tags and that sort of thing, fixing track names, all that. And then I was finding that because of Amazon's DRM, the music I had purchased through Amazon, I couldn't access it unless I had the Amazon app installed. And furthermore, there was no way to find the music because it was hidden in such a way that basically you couldn't access it normally. And so what I ended up having to do to work around that was I had to download the music on my PC, find the folder on my PC, which was much easier to do, and then copy the music over and put it on my device. And that ended up working, but I still have to have the Amazon app installed, even though I don't like it, so that I can actually listen to that music that I paid for. All of that being said, now whenever I want new music, I buy the CD. I just buy the CD, I get better quality audio because I can rip it in uncompressed wave format, and then I don't have to deal with that. There are occasionally situations where I'll buy something digitally, like if I'm buying a soundtrack through Steam or whatever, but usually when I get it through Steam, I can get it uncompressed anyway, because usually they'll have both MP3 and wave format for the soundtracks, which is helpful. But in general, I'm just so much, you go for physical whenever you have the option. if the price is ridiculously high, sometimes it's not necessarily as worth it. And I think that it can be good to kind of have a hybrid approach, somewhat. Like, for example, I have a bunch of 3DS games, and of course the eShop is shut down now, so from that standpoint, I don't really have to worry about them necessarily like revoking my licenses, theoretically, because they're not really dealing with that. But like, I have a bunch of physical games as well, and I have copied all of those physical games over to my 3DS. So I have digital versions of all those games. I have all of them backed up, and then I still have my physical copies, which, I don't know exactly how long their shelf life will be ultimately. But I have the stuff backed up one way or another. And I think it's good to have backups of your digital stuff, and hopefully you have a way to work past any DRM that might be an issue. But all this stuff about just basically wanting to make it so that people stop owning their games at all, I don't like it. And yes, I will say, from an Eternal perspective, technically we don't own anything anyway. But, we do still, in at least in a sense, own it. And it's still just important, especially in this day and age when, the powers that be don't want us to own anything, and they just want us to rent everything. And all of that. It's important that we don't just rent things. We don't just subscribe to services where they can take those things away at any time. I can't even begin to tell you how much money I've probably saved over the years by not being subscribed to subscription services. Like, I stopped doing Netflix several years ago. I haven't done... I mean, Disney Plus I did for a while, but I got in early, and they grandfathered at a lower rate for quite a while before they finally raised it, and then I eventually ended up, canceling it probably 4 or 5 months ago. And then when it comes to like movies and TV shows, I mean, I've just bought the ones I wanted, and so I have 2 massive shelves, one right here nearby me that's just movies and like some of my physical games, and then another shelf that's on the other side of the wall that has all TV shows that we have, DVDs and Blu-rays of those. And that's how I preserve that stuff. That's how I have access to what I want, and I don't have to worry about streaming services. And if I really want something else, I can go buy it. In general, and I would much rather buy it and have access to it permanently than be dependent on a streaming service, because I gotta say, there will come a day when, or there may come a day, based on the direction that our world is going, where social credit score might become a thing like it is in China, and they're already moving that way. So, just, you gotta be aware that these people can take away your stuff anytime they want when it comes to that. I mean, granted, I am sure that there's ways that they could even come take away our physical media, but it's not as easy for them. Anyway, that's going way off the deep end. And, I mean, it's a good thing we don't have a whole lot of listeners. If we did, they'd probably think I'm some crazy conspiracy theorist, but it's just paying attention to what's going on in the world. That's all it is. Anyway, I will do my best to own my products, and I will be happy owning my products. And I hope that more and more people will realize that it's best to do everything they can to own their products. I am not, in general, pro-piracy. At least not if you have the option to actually purchase something. But it is definitely one way that things can actually be more or less owned. So Do with that what you will. That's all I'm going to say. I will say that I do not believe in piracy for things that you can still purchase. At least not if you can purchase them from the actual publisher, developer, so on and so forth, as opposed to just buying them from a reseller who's going to, upcharge you way more than they should be. But anyway. Other thoughts on this whole topic?
Nope, I just agree with you 100%. Just buy your media, own your media. Don't rely on someone else.
Yep. Okay. So here's a completely random thing that I'm just going to mention because I forgot to mention it earlier. So my kids earlier were playing a game. I guess they were trying to reenact Smash Brothers to some degree. And I mean, like, I can't even remember. I think the last time that I played Smash Brothers with my kids, which was really the only time I ever did that. I think they might have played some with their cousins, though. It was around Christmas. And earlier today, both my oldest and my youngest were reenacting some Smash Brothers stuff, and they kept calling Samus Dark Samus. And oh man, I can't remember what the other one was. Really funny. It was not like at all a name that matched with anything, but it was, dang it, I wish I could remember what it was. It was really funny though. Just the names they came up with and stuff. Anyway, I don't know. I don't even know if I'll include this in the podcast because I don't remember enough details. I should have written it down though because it was really funny. Okay. Anyway. So I guess one last thing that we talk about just a little bit. I mean, we already pretty much covered this topic a bit last week, but of course, we have the Xbox Developer Direct that's happening tomorrow. And we're not going to do any of our fake summaries of what supposedly happened there because I didn't think ahead about that. And last time I think we jumped the shark a few too many times on that front. But do you have any last minute predictions, things that you expect you might see there?
I guess part of it is just because of the port we received. I really would like to see Perfect Dark, the new Perfect Dark game. I mean, I don't expect to see it there, but just something that I would really like to see, something I could get more information of. Yeah, that's really, I guess I could say, the thing that I'm really looking forward to the most. Maybe get some more information about Indiana Jones, but like I said before, I'm also still skeptical about that just because of how they handled the last film. But I've got to see there, but that'll be good to at least get some information on that end.
Right. Well, I mean, we know for a fact that they're going to have Indiana Jones there because they've already said they are. So it's going to be shown for sure. We know Hellblade's going to be shown for sure. Avowed's going to be shown for sure. And then there was like some other game that they had mentioned, but beyond that, it's all kind of up in the air. I do not think that they're going to mention anything about their games coming to other platforms at the show. Mm-hmm. I think that more likely than not, assuming it's actually happening, which I think seems very likely, Hi-Fi Rush would probably be announced at Nintendo's next Direct, which, if the pattern is anything to go by, will probably be in February. Could even be a shadow drop, actually. In fact, I think that would be pretty likely. I'd say that would probably be shown. Probably be a shadow drop for a Nintendo Switch in February. But we're not getting into Nintendo Direct territory. There is the I mean, as far as the Sea of Thieves thing, I think that's another one where it would probably be a state of play announcement if it's actually coming to PlayStation. And I don't know. It sounds like maybe Hi-Fi Rush would be on both platforms. I honestly have no idea. Like, I don't know what to expect exactly. I believe that it's coming to Switch, and beyond that, I don't know. So, I'm not really expecting anything in particular, but I just hope that the Xbox fans get a showcase that they enjoy. We get the release date for Hellblade 2, and some people are saying that Indiana Jones might actually be coming this year, which would be pretty interesting, especially if it actually ends up looking like a good game. But if not for the fact that I really just... I think that it would be a huge mistake, and I don't think that they're as bad as Sony. I could almost see them having... say it's an Indiana Jones game, and then it's revealed that it's actually his goddaughter being the character. Yeah. So I did not watch that movie. I heard about the plot leaks before it happened, which were all true. And I refused to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But I'm cautiously optimistic about the game. So we'll see what happens. And if it's terrible, no big loss. I'm kind of hoping that it ends up being like a better version of Uncharted, like it should be. Because I like Uncharted, but there's definitely a lot more they could have done with those games. My throat's dry. But something we can also just very briefly talk about. In general, we don't really cover these Nintendo Switch 2 rumors because they're a dime a dozen. And most of the time it just ends up feeling completely pointless because it's just like, okay, yeah, we've heard this rumor and this rumor. Until Nintendo actually shows something or announces something, there's really no point in talking about it. But there is that press release from AI Shark, was formerly Game Shark, that the Nintendo Switch 2, or Super Switch, or whatever it's going to be called, is supposed to be coming this year. And I think they said, September, that it's coming in September. Which is an interesting thought. I think that this is probably one of the more believable rumors, I guess you could say. But I'm still not convinced because there's just so many of these rumors all the time. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that this is more credible than a lot of stuff just because of the fact that this was on PR Newswire, which is a site that a lot of companies use for putting out their investor relation reports and any other sort of reports that they have, especially with finances and stuff like that. So I think that there is a lot of weight here. Could it be November? Maybe. September. Maybe not. But I do think that it could be at the very least announced this year. And if it doesn't come out this year, then maybe next year. That's what I think. And I mean, considering the fact that the Switch is 7 years old, and granted, Nintendo beats to the march of their own drum. Like, they do not follow any sort of conventional generation standards or ideas like that. So they might be waiting longer. They might, not. They might be actually doing it. But I definitely think that the Switch has had a long life. They've done revisions to it. They've had the OLED, they've had the lights versions, but considering that, people said that when it was released, it technically was already outdated hardware-wise.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely, the time is definitely right to release a Switch 2.
Right.
And I know that there's a lot of talk about, oh, what does it do? What's its capabilities? I know one of the general rules is that it would be on roughly about the level of a PS4, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I mean, that's essentially roughly what the Steam Deck is, as far as performance-wise. So, if it's something like that, then that's fine. I think that one thing I will say, though, is that having the hybrid console handheld factor, I think it's possibly the best thing that Nintendo's done in a long time. So, I mean, I think this is something that they probably should stick with. I'll just say that I really hope that if they do something like this, and this is what the next console is, I just would hope that they improve the quality of the Joy-Con so that there's no sticking, no drifting, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, this all the rumors about the Switch 2 definitely give me some real I guess hopes that it's actually going to be as good as people are saying, because the PS4 quality, I mean, that makes perfect sense, being on the same level power-wise. The thing that has me the most intrigued, though, is the idea of it potentially making use of DLSS 3. And, that being, not only to be able to upscale to 4K through AI, but also be able to do frame generation, which I guess, I mean, like early on the frame generation, a lot of people had a lot of gripes with it, like just said it didn't work super well, but people have been saying it's actually gotten a lot better, that it actually works surprisingly well. And considering the fact that Nintendo is partnered with Nvidia, theoretically they could very well be making use of this stuff, could have a legitimately custom chip instead of just using an X1, the Tegra X1. Of course, knowing Nintendo, it could just be that they're using the X2 now. But if they can actually make use of, and if Nvidia and them can work together in such a way that they can make something more custom, this could end up being much more than just the leap up to PS4 level. I mean, even if it is more or less artificially higher than that. And that's something I'm very curious to see what happens with it. Now, personally, it's not a huge deal for me because I don't care that much about things getting more realistic and so on and so forth. But it would be nice to see the Switch doing better than it does right now. And I mean, I definitely have like mixed reception on the quality of Switch ports. Obviously, my biggest thing is I would love to see 60 frames per second on every game, at least. And that doesn't always happen. But it's one of those things where it would still be neat to see it happen. And see them be able to not only have that, but then have better visuals, actually be able to do 4K, even if it is just, the AI upscaling, which, I don't even have a 4K TV, so for me it doesn't make an impact, but I think that it would be cool for people who have complained about that, because I know some people that they love certain Switch games, like some of their games of the year for the last couple of years have been Switch exclusive games, like Tears of the Kingdom and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And they've said that they absolutely love those games, but they hate the fact that they look so terrible on a 4K screen. And I could definitely understand that. I play my games handheld more than anything, and the highest resolution screen I have is 1080p other than my phone. But I still definitely see that could be something really great for the average person, because I think most people have 4K TVs now because they're really cheap. It's really easy to get a good cheap 4K screen. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I would say, though, that if this was a good enough upgrade and had an OLED screen, I could see myself potentially doing it. The main thing for me is that I'm still not sold on 4K, mostly because of the sheer amount of things I would have to buy to actually upgrade to 4K. And, like, the TV that I have in my room, 720p. It's actually a 15-year-old TV because, well, it's technically older than that. It was something that it's one of the only things that I've held on to for a long time, and it's because it was a TV that my dad and I went and picked out. It was a wedding present for me and my wife, and because of the fact that my dad is attached to it, and he died 5 years ago, over 5 years ago now. It's something where I'm just like, I'm not willing to let it go. I had to let go of other things that reminded me of my dad, like the van that we drove up to Alaska in that I had owned for like 12 years, because we bought it from my parents after we got married. And I just very much think of my dad with that van because that was the one that he and I drove up to Alaska in when we moved up there in the first place, and 21 years ago, or little over 20 years ago, really. But anyway, so I've had to let go of a number of things related to my dad, and that was one thing I did. That TV I just didn't want to let go of because it still works, and it was like over $100 to ship it, but it was less expensive to ship it than it was to buy a new TV technically, and the sentimental value is still there. So that's why I still have it. But anyway, that's completely off topic. The point being, I don't care that much about 4K. I'm not ready to make the upgrade, and I don't know when I ever will. Because I'm sure it'll happen eventually. I just don't know when. But I do like the idea of Nintendo moving forward and trying to do more to make their platform better, while at the same time not having to do the same thing that the other platforms are doing. Keep marching to the beat of their own drum, and being one of the only companies that's not spending ridiculous amounts of money on every game they make and then not making it back. Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on that. I do want to mention one quick thing because I forgot to mention it while we were talking about the whole Ubisoft thing. People who say that these subscription services don't make much, aren't profitable, I think that they're just wrong. Because it's like, the reason why they keep doing these things is because they have a consistent source of revenue from a lot of different people, and a lot of people just don't even bother to cancel, even if they're barely using the service. And them, getting a consistent source of revenue versus $60 once every 6 months, I'm telling you, these subscription services make way more money than people think, and that's why things like Ubisoft and Game Pass and everything can do as well as they can, whereas you have Sony, who their only profitable part is their gaming division, is PlayStation. And PlayStation's struggling and has had to cancel a bunch of stuff because they're not making enough of what they're spending on these huge games. And it's like we've been saying, you keep making these huge games that cost a lot to make, keep trying to push the envelope graphically, these balloon budgets, this thing is going to crash, and crash hard. Potentially in the next 5 to 6 years. I just think something's going to happen, but that's going off topic. Or kind of like related to / off topic. Whatever. Who cares? Alright, any final thoughts before we close out for the night?
I guess just one last thing I'll say or relates to Nintendo is that one thing I would actually like is that the next Switch iteration would have backwards compatibility.
Yes.
That's the one thing that I would like to see.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing, for me, it has to have backwards compatibility, and there has to be an OLED version. I'm not going to buy another LCD and then just have them release an OLED later. I'm not doing that again. It was fine the first time, and I'm glad I bought the Switch when I did. I'm glad I got it at launch. There's no way I will ever have any regrets about that. But I definitely, if I had known there was an OLED version coming, I would have at least waited before I bought that second Switch. Instead of having to eventually sell the second Switch that I bought so that I would have a good excuse to buy the OLED. I mean, I bought my OLED late anyway, but still, yes. So, we'll see what Nintendo does. If it's not backwards compatible, then I'm really going to just be waiting even longer, because I'm not cool with that. Like, I could get rid of my OLED, or I could, we could sell my original Switch. My wife could have the OLED, and then I could get the Switch 2, but I'd rather just have a good reason to buy it, because I have so much in the way of consoles. I mean, like, you saw that picture for our thumbnail last week. That was all the consoles that I have in boxes that are just sitting there and not doing anything, may never be used again. So, I'm tired of it. I'm gonna stop buying that stuff unless I'm actually gonna make use of it. So, all right. So recommendations and dissuasions. Why don't you start us off?
All right. Yeah. So I actually forgot about this. So I'm going to say my recommendation is to finish what you've started. If you have a project that you've been working on, go back and finish it. You might get some satisfaction out of, seeing the work that you've done be completed. It might be something that you enjoyed, something that you may save some sort of part of a hobby that you did. Go back, finish it. If it's something that's important, definitely go back and finish it if it's important, because that's going to just bite you in the butt if you don't. So that's my on-the-spot recommendation.
All right. Well, my recommendation is a YouTube channel called Afterlife Gaming. Very specifically, I want to point to his theory videos related to Metal Gear Solid. I went down a rabbit hole and watched several of them after finishing the story for Metal Gear Solid 5, because I was waiting. I kept seeing those pop up in my YouTube feed, but I didn't watch them because I didn't want the story spoiled for me. Now that I've gotten the story completed, it's like, okay, now I can go through a bunch of these videos, and Afterlife Gaming definitely has the most interesting, well thought out videos that I've seen. And I've watched a few other theory videos and analysis videos on Metal Gear Solid, specifically the Phantom Pain, and some of the theories are like, okay, I see how you came to that conclusion, but I don't necessarily agree with it. But Afterlife Gaming's videos, I find, are not only well thought out, but actually really, I think he's right on all the stuff he's been saying. So definitely go check out his channel, Afterlife Gaming, on YouTube. He has a bunch of Metal Gear related videos, and there's going to be spoilers, of course, so if you haven't played through the series, it's not necessarily going to be something that you will want to watch, unless you just don't care enough about the story. But the story is much more interesting if you play the games as well, so there's that. I don't want to say, if you aren't wanting to get into the story lore of Metal Gear Solid, of that whole series, something that I just want to recommend for people in general is grind your own coffee. So you don't necessarily have to go as far as I do, roasting your own coffee, buying green coffee beans, roasting them, and then going from there. But I say grind your own coffee rather than getting pre-ground, because the quality difference is so much different. Now, yes, if you roast it yourself or if you get like really freshly roasted, it's going to be the best possible coffee you can get. But when it comes to coffee, basically think of it as the second you grind the beans, it's like opening a bottle of soda. There's only so long before it goes completely flat. And the same is true with coffee. If once you grind those beans, you start losing some of the oils, you start losing a lot of the flavor, it gets stale, and the coffee's not nearly as good. Even though they vacuum seal it usually, especially like if you're buying things like Folgers. And Folgers, the beans are absolute garbage. They have no quality control. They let, in order to get all of the chaff off of the beans, they will let it sit in a vat of water. And even if there's mold, they'll just throw it all together, throw it all in there for grinding. So you're getting very low quality, terrible coffee doing Folgers. But if you do your own beans, even if in many cases it's because of how dark roasts tend to be overdone, rather that is in that they get roasted a little bit too much, and so you lose some of the oils. Shiny beans are because of the oils on the outside, and you're losing some of the flavor, but it's still better than Folgers, always. It's better than Folgers, and it's better than most pre-ground coffee. It's better than Starbucks. That's enough. I'm done with that. Okay. Dissuasions.
My dissuasion. This is actually one that I had, or I was going to use last week, but I changed. And that is, do not ignore any potential warning lights that might be on your computer if you're having problems. If you are having a problem and you look at it and you think, oh, it might be software related, it could be software related, but it also could be hardware related. And that's actually something that I've neglected to do before, where I thought it's software related, and then I look and I see, oh, it actually might be hardware related. So don't neglect. Again, there is a chance it could be related to your software, but there also could be a chance it's related to your hardware. So don't neglect, don't overlook that step, and you might actually have a reason to you might have something you can fix more easily if you just looked at your hardware and saw, oh look, there's a little light there that's blinking or something. Don't do that.
All right. Well, my dissuasion, and I wholeheartedly agree with yours, by the way, but my dissuasion is do not only subscribe to subscription services when it comes to games and, well, movies, etc. as well, music, all of that. Don't go with only subscription services, because you will never own any of the things that you have. There's no guarantee that you'll get to keep listening to the stuff or watching the stuff that you want to watch. You're just at the whim of them and them alone. And it's so much better if you purchase it yourself whenever you can. And I understand that sometimes from a financial standpoint, that's just not feasible. I totally get that. But what I would say is just don't make it so that that's your only source for entertainment is through subscription services. Especially because that adds up a lot. And considering how many subscription services there are for different TV shows and movies and music and video games and everything else, you could be easily spending hundreds of dollars every month just on the subscription services that you have. Versus you could just be putting that money towards actually buying things that you get to keep. And even if in some cases you are more or less just getting a license, it's still ultimately better than the streaming services. So don't do just those. It's fine to do them, just don't make that your only source for entertainment unless you really just are somehow okay with owning absolutely nothing, which I'm not. So That's it. That's what I got. All right, so where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel, I am Zeracon, youtube.com/@IamZeracon, IAMXERACON. Not certain what my next video will be. I had one that was covering the Capcom DRM incident, but we'll see. I had something that I planned, but I don't know if it's still topical or not. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, you can find me youtube.com/@thefrozengamer87. I've been putting out OLED comparison videos, the most recent one of which is a comparison between the Switch OLED and the Steam Deck OLED for Borderlands 2. I did actually get a chance to double check on the frame rate because actually, never mind, I put that in the description. But yeah, 90 frames per second, solid 90 frames per second on Borderlands 2 on the Steam Deck. My next video, I haven't fully decided which one I'm doing yet. Originally, I was going to do Borderlands the pre-sequel, but I'm not sure now because, at least so far, Borderlands 2 is getting very, very low engagement compared with the others. Usually the other ones, like I would have over 1,000 views by now. This one I have like 150. So, I'm not sure if it's just nobody's interested in watching Borderlands 2 or what it is, but I am either going to do Borderlands the pre-sequel, I may still do that, or I may move on to something different, which would probably be either Final Fantasy XII the Zodiac Age, doing comparison between Steam Deck and Switch, or doing one of my Vita comparisons and doing like maybe Vita versus Switch on Final Fantasy X HD, or potentially doing Steam Deck versus Vita again and doing the PS1 version of Metal Gear Solid, comparing that between the Vita or the Vita through the internal PS1 emulator versus the DuckStation emulated version on the Steam Deck. So I haven't fully decided what I'm doing yet. I have to record that, figure it out. But one way or another, we'll make some more progress on that front. Additionally, as I've mentioned the past few weeks, I do have a cooking channel called Not Authentic But Delicious. That's youtube.com/@NABDcooking. Most recently this week, I put out a recipe for hearty chili, or also known as So Hearty It Broke the Ladle chili, from the time that it broke a plastic ladle when I was stirring it. But additionally, I also just today put my channel intro video that just gives an overview of what the channel's all about, and really just kind of gives you a good idea of who I am and why it is that I put together this channel in the first place. The funny thing is, so I have this folder just full of various royalty-free music, most of which I got from YouTube. And I just randomly picked a song from that, listened to a little bit. It's like, okay, this sounds nice. Didn't realize it had words in it initially, and added it to the video as I was editing this evening. And the songs at a certain point starts having actual like words to it, and even though I'm pretty sure the guy is probably talking about a girl, at one point he says something like you tickle my appetite, something to that effect. And it's literally during a section where I have a bunch of images of various things I've made throughout the years, various food items, and so it's just like perfect timing, you know. It's just like it's quite funny that it ended up that way. It's like the song came from God. But yeah, so yeah, there's the channel intro video now for the channel. And Monday the 22nd, the next recipe that's going up is for green Thai curry. and that's with chicken, ton of veggies, jasmine rice. It's fantastic. One of my favorite recipes. Don't make it very often because it takes a lot of effort. Just because there's, well, I shouldn't say, it's maybe not a lot of effort, but it takes a little bit of time to make because there's lots of veggies to chop up and then the chicken, and there's just a bunch of different steps to it, but it's all really good stuff, and it's really, really good food. So, yeah. All right. Any thoughts before we close out for the night?
No, sir.
All right. I just realized I didn't come up with an outro yet, so I guess we'll just wing it. So, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast, and until next time, you too could be the man who sold the world. Or something like that. Orange Box Podcast.